Welcome, everybody, to the Healthy Habit Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dayan of Healthy Habit Medical Center, located right inside Healthy Habit Health Foods. And you're tuned in to episode 198 here with Dr. Gaetano Morello, naturopathic doctor, published author, licensed naturopathic physician. Recently has been appointed as a clinician at the newly created Complex Chronic Disease Program located at BC Women's Hospital in Vancouver. Fellow Canadian is with us here, folks. He's the first naturopathic doctor to hold such a position at a major North American hospital. And I'm excited to talk on this one. Is the last time we spoke was in 2024. So this is a good, fresh update on this for people that are new to the program. Might be their first time here listening to Dr. Morello, where we're going to be diving deep into mitochondria health here today and products such as the mitochondrial support formula by RegenerLife, acetyl L-carnitine, the NMN surge, much more. So Dr. Morello, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, nice to meet you. Always fun to discuss, topics that are relevant to health and topics that, can help us become healthier, feel healthier, and live, really productive lives.
Exactly. So some people have maybe just heard of mitochondria. They don't know exactly what that is. So why are they so important? They're in all the cells of our body. What do they do? Explain to us the mitochondria.
Yeah, so they're in every single cell with the exception of one, the red blood cells, but every other cell they're there. So to explain what the mitochondria are and what they do, the best way that I can explain it is by looking at the most important element in life. And the most important element in life is not food and water. The most important element in life that we would all agree with is air, oxygen. We can't go without it.
Yeah.
And when you look at the consequential effects when you don't have oxygen, a really good example that everybody can relate to because they know somebody who's gone through this
Yeah.
are strokes. So a stroke is a lack of blood flow to a particular area of the brain, which means that that area of the brain is not getting oxygen. And what happens? Those individuals can become paralyzed. They can lose the ability to walk, talk. They can even die, which then begs the question, what is oxygen doing that renders it so critically important to life? And so when we look at oxygen, we breathe it in, it's incorporated into our red blood cells in our lungs. Inside the red blood cells is a protein called hemoglobin, and inside of that is it's like a magnet, iron, and
Uh-huh.
iron finds the oxygen, propels it through about 60,000 miles of capillaries, eventually reaching, you know, uh, uh, the cell of, say, the glial cells of the brain. And where does it go when it gets inside the glial cells of the brain? It goes into these little organelles called mitochondria, which is supposed to be
Mm.
the powers of the cell. And it goes through a series of steps to produce the body's electricity, which is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Each one of those cells could have, 400, 500, 3,000, 4,000 mitochondria, 25% of the cell volume is mitochondria. So the
Wow.
mitochondria, to complete the discussion or the question, is like a hydro dam. The water is the oxygen. The water falls down the hydro dam, turns the turbines, and produces the electricity that lights up our cities. In the body, the mitochondria produce the electricity that lights up our lives. So everything that we have is reliant on this energy production.
Yeah.
And when we look at the mitochondria, they're very unique structures. They're very different from all other structures in the body.
Amazing. Yeah. Great introduction there to the mitochondria, Dr. Morello. So as we age, our mitochondria, they start slowing down in function, right? They're not able to produce the energy as efficiently. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what happens is, first of all, these mitochondria are very unique. And what's unique about them is, number one, is they carry their own DNA.
Yep.
Outside of the nucleic DNA that you get from your father and your mother, the chromosomes in your nucleus, these little things, they're independent of that DNA. So they have their own DNA. And also, they are inherited only from our mothers, not our fathers. What's also interesting is the fact that both the mitochondria And the other really important aspect or structure in the human body, the microbiome, both of those are only inherited from our mothers, not our fathers. And we also see that there's communication between the two of them. And here's an interesting one. The human body, how much ATP does the human body, how much electricity do we produce daily? So I weigh about 190 pounds. So I produce about 190 pounds of ATP of electricity daily. In other words, this electricity continuously is being made for us to utilize.
Wow.
And think about this. If every cell type in the body is like a factory producing something, so you have factories that are producing automobiles, you have factories that are producing cell phones, whatever the factory is, it needs power. So if every cell type in the body is a factory producing something, so my muscles are factories that produce extension and contraction, those factories are going to be reliant on power, on electricity
Right.
to function. When that electricity is not present, they can't function. So this is why when somebody passes, rigor mortis sets in, the muscles are tight. Why are they tight? Because there's no ATP to extend and contract the muscles. That's why they're tight. So think about it from this perspective. So our muscles, extension, contraction, our heart contraction, relaxation, our liver's metabolism, our kidneys extraction, our visual fields be able to see, our neurons to communicate. So we
Yeah.
have all these different cell types doing all sorts of things. And as we get older, the ability of the mitochondria to produce electricity can be damaged.
Yeah.
Also, the amount of mitochondria in each cell reduces in volume. So you have
Oh,
less of them,
interesting.
and therefore, is aging related to mitochondrial dysfunction because our bodies are always being remade. So our skin gets remade, our red blood cells get. And so that remaking requires two things: one, building blocks, and two, power. And if you don't have the power, you can't build. So they're critical to everything. Like
That's a
you,
great analogy. You actually need to have the fuel to regenerate as well, not just the building blocks. Otherwise, they'll just sit there. You can't use the building blocks unless you have that fuel, right?
100%. And it's so no so you can see is this the reason why certain people age faster than others? Because
Mm,
you can see, like, for example, as an example, just an example, people can look this up. You can go and look up identical twins, smoker versus non-smoker.
mm.
You'll probably see about 10 years of difference. Even though they're identical twins. So why is that? Well, I mean, can we come up with theories? Yeah, well, it's easy. There's more free radicals in the smoker. There's less oxygen going into the body because there's interference. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts. Is this impacting mitochondrial function? Yeah, I mean, I can make that assumption that I would say yes, it is.
Absolutely. Great breakdown. And so basically, everyone needs mitochondrial support. Literally, we don't have the fuel to, fuel every bodily process to prevent chronic diseases. And we're actually getting to basically the root issue of aging potentially here in this episode here with Dr. Morello and chronic diseases. It all points back down to that mitochondria. They're not functioning as how they're supposed to. And what causes that mitochondrial dysfunction over time? You mentioned smoking's one thing, but what else can affect the health of our mitochondria? What can we be doing to keep them healthy and youthful? We'll plug in a couple supplements here that can play a role, but what else? What can you start us off with?
Well, first, what predicates human health? What are the systems involved? Well, one system is the environment. The foods we consume, the water we drink, the stress levels we have, that's the environment. That has an impact on the human body, which will have an impact on symptomology, which has an impact on mitochondria. Uh, Genetics will play a role, but genetics are only expressed because of the epigenome, the environment. So the environment plays a big role. And we can look at the changes in diseases in 1940s to 50s is when things shifted. So we had a huge decline, and it's still declining on infectious diseases because of hygiene and antibiotics. And we had a shift and rise in chronic diseases, deaths from chronic diseases. It's still rising.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, what happened was the introduction of 70,000 if 70,000 chemicals that are put in foods. Our diet shifted. So that was the shift. It's these chemicals, so we're poisoning our body. So that's one. Second, the one cell lining that separates everything in your gut from entering your bloodstream, this one cell parameter, this one cell paradox and I call it cell paradox because it has to be permeable enough to allow nutrients to get inside the blood. It has to be
Right.
strong enough to block, things we don't want to get into the blood. And I think there's leakiness all the time, especially through stress. So that one cell lining is critical. So the breakdown of that is going to create issues with the mitochondria. I'm gonna talk about that when I talk about redox. And then the immune system plays a major role in all this because we always think about the immune system just as a defender of the body.
Yeah.
But we have problems with the immune system. Hyperactive immune system causes inflammation throughout the body. So we need immune modulation. This will impact the mitochondria as well. And last but not least, something that we are, really exploring now in greater depth than ever before, and that is the microbiome,
Yeah.
which plays a significant role in everything that we do, which is hard to believe, how these bacteria they do all these things, but they do so many things. So they are a critical component in mitochondrial function through the production of various compounds that not only, you know, uh, maintain the integrity of the epithelial lining in the gut, but also in the brain. And also they produce substances that can feed the mitochondria through something we call beta oxidation, and
Uh-huh.
that's butyric acid. So influencing those will influence how the mitochondria are. So I have two ways of helping the mitochondria. One is called upregulation, and the other is called redox. And so upregulation is what it kind of suggests, upregulating, boosting the ability of the mitochondria to produce electricity. So, so the best example I give of that to I really enjoy examples or
Right.
parallel we can
Yeah. Yeah.
relate. So if you don't eat for a day or two, what are you going to do? You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel lightheaded.
Yeah.
You're going to say, I need something. And the reason why you're saying that is because what allows you to think, what allows you to move is electricity. Because you're not producing enough electricity because the mitochondria, yes, they need oxygen, but they also need macro and micronutrients. So you need things to help bolster. You need to feed the mitochondria.
Right.
They take food as well. So what are the food substances? Well, number one, what I recommend all patients. So I've been practicing for 33 years medicine. For the last 12 years, I know
Wow.
you said newly appointed, but I've been there for 12 years
Oh,
now
okay.
with complex diseases. And all, and I've seen about in the last 12 years, probably about 10,000, just over 10,000 patients with complex diseases. These are fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, allergic encephalomyelitis, chronic Lyme, and now long COVID. And all these patients have the ethos of these conditions, of these symptomology, the fatigue, the post-exertion malaise, the IBS symptoms, the pain, the unrefreshing sleep, the cognitive dysfunction in the form of brain fog and memory loss, all these things, they're all related to energy production. So one of the things that I've recommended all of them, because it's a hit, because it works on 80% of the population, is 25 grams of protein in the morning. It's almost so simple. Like it's called my low-lying fruit and it works. So out of 10 people that are going to take that, are going to do that, eight are going to see a response. And that response is they're going to have more energy. They're going to feel a feeling of well-being just doing that. Why? Well, because all DNA makes is protein. It doesn't make anything else.
Yeah.
And protein will allow the mitochondria to take in the amino acids and produce their own sugars. That way, it doesn't even impact your blood sugar levels. Number one. Number two, the second add to this is something that everybody's familiar with. Another low-lying fruits I hit, Magnesium, 300 milligrams in the morning, 300 milligrams at night. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Can't get much simpler than that. So that's another one to take. And then there is, things like, for example, coenzyme Q10. When you look at the mitochondria, where the turbines are that produce electricity, they're in the inner membrane of the mitochondria, and there's a whole bunch of these. We call them the electron transport chain
Yeah.
because it moves electrons across these five turbines, eventually going to the big turbine, which is going to turn and create the electricity, the ATP, very much like a hydro dam. Uh, in that, in those turbines, one of the turbines right after the first turbine is something called coenzyme Q10, ubiquinone.
Yes.
So I recommend either that or the ubiquinol, 300 milligrams in the morning. So 300 milligrams of that, and that's a hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Another compound that is part of this important strategy is something called acetyl-L-carnitine. And so the way that this works and the way that I explain it is that a duck can travel 1,000 miles without ever landing. How does it do that? Because it uses its fat for energy. And so the way that it takes the fat and brings it inside the mitochondria so it can go through something we call beta oxidation to produce electricity, it's carried in there by a truck, and that truck is acetyl-L-carnitine. So it's a
Yeah.
carrier. It carries it in. And one of the things that you will notice with this is you'll notice improvement in brain fog, memory loss, and even it can also reduce pain. So the data on it is quite significant. And then last
Interesting.
but not least, in this upregulation kind of discussion point, is active B vitamins. So active B vitamins are pretty important because they're involved in every reaction possible. And a lot of patients will come in, well, Dr. Morello, I have my B12 is really high, but I don't even take B12 at a time. Well, it's probably because you're not methylating. It's in the blood. It's not getting inside the cell. So you need to take a methylated form of it. So active B vitamins will give you that opportunity. And so these kind of upregulators, it's been put together in this product that you call the RegenerLife mitochondrial product, and so
Yeah.
it
And
all
I'm
kind of
actually gonna do
combines.
a I'm gonna do a quick screen share here, Dr. Morello. If everyone's
Sure.
following along on YouTube here, folks, go to naturalfactors.com and just type in RegenerLife, and we're gonna pull that up on the screen because this brings everything together with what Dr. Morello's been talking about here in this episode, except for the active B vitamins as well as the protein and magnesium. Those aren't in this formula. But yeah, break down this one. Here's that acetyl L-carnitine that you were saying, which serves as the truck in your analogy that transports the fat into the mitochondria for beta oxidation. And we had the CoQ10 in there. So break down this formula for us. We even have L-glutathione in here, the master antioxidant, right? We can have a whole episode just on glutathione, Dr. Morello.
Yeah, you really
So
could.
tell us.
You could. So let's look at so
Yeah.
that second part of this is called redox. So that's a little bit more complicated. So I know we have about 8 minutes left, so I'm going to explain that part right
Yeah.
now. So here it is. So redox is this. When you take an apple and you slice it in half, it oxidizes. So
Right.
why? It's rusting. Why is it rusting? Because it's reacting with the oxygen. So
Yeah.
oxygen is a double-sided sword. It causes rusting. So, but if you slice the apple again, you squeeze lemon juice on it, it won't rust because the lemon juice acts as an antioxidant. And what the
Mm.
lemon juice is, it's providing electrons. All antioxidants are electron donors. That's all they are.
Right.
Every antioxidant electron, glutathione is an electron donor, SOD is an electron donor, vitamin C is an electron donor, vitamin E is an electron donor. They're electron donors. Okay. So now we're going to take that analogy and we're going to go into the mitochondria. And so this is something that it's kind of my kind of gig, I call it, because you're not going to find it in books
Right.
and you can't find it in science. But here's my gig. My gig is that I've created a platform or a caveat, and the caveat is that the mitochondria can never, ever, under any circumstances, rust. If it rusts, it dies. If it dies, we die. So that's my caveat. Okay. So now we know that the mitochondria has lots of stuff going through it, lots of oxygen, tons of oxygen. It's making millions and millions of ATP molecules every second. So how does the mitochondria, because in my caveat, it cannot rust. So how does it not rust? Because there's lots of oxygen in it. It doesn't rust because it has its own lemons. The lemons are glutathione and SOD, superoxide dismutase. But instead of remembering those complicated names, I know you have them on the screen.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's think, or let's visualize that the mitochondria produces 100 lemons per day. Okay, 100 lemons per day. So all mitochondria don't rust because they produce 100 lemons a day.
Yeah.
So what happens if an influx in stress or viruses or lipopolysaccharides crossing the gut? So remember, when you're stressed, when the zebra runs away from the lion, the zebra needs blood in its legs. So where does it get its blood? From the core, from the gut.
Right.
That one cell lining loses blood. We've measured this, and you're going to get leakiness in the gut. What if that
Wow.
leakiness comes inside the body, goes to the mitochondria, and rots 50 of your lemons? Now, instead of having 100 lemons, you only have 50. What's the mitochondria going to do? Because it can't rust, because if it rusts, it dies.
Yeah.
If it dies, we die. So how's it going to adapt? It's going to reduce the uptake of oxygen by 50% and reduce the output of energy by 50%. You've just lost 50% of your energy. And this is
Yeah.
why stress creates so many issues within the human body because of this fact. And
Unbelievable.
so the way that we can counteract that is by trying to enhance or give the mitochondria more electrons. And this is why this formula has, the glutathione, the ATPase, and then the other one that you can also, uh, utilize is something called NMN. And I'm not sure if it's available down there. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
Uh, NMN is nicotinamide monodinucleotide. What it is a precursor to something called NAD.
Yeah.
NAD carries electrons into the mitochondria. So as we age, we have less and less NMN, NAD. And so by increasing the levels of NAD, you can do that. 250 milligrams a day can increase the NAD levels by about 60% after just 4 weeks. So
Wow.
that's significant. So this is another way of getting electrons into the mitochondria. Another way of getting electrons into the mitochondria is grounding.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if
Interesting.
people know that all electrons come from the earth, right? Well, that's why they grow into vegetables. That's why vegetables, fruits, they're healthy for you. Why? Because they're full of electrons. So everything is about electrons. And so a tree can go to 200 feet because the electrons coming from the earth creating the atoms that build the tree. It's
Wow.
kind of, it sounds simple, but it is what it is. That's why
Right.
when you walk along the beach, you feel so good. So those are the two methodologies that you can improve mitochondrial function. And last but not least, I'm gonna point this out.
Yeah.
GABA is another one because GABA can downregulate the sympathetic response, the stress response. And
Hmm.
the stress response is at the cusp of a lot of leakiness in the gut that we see with patients.
It's unbelievable. You hit this in multiple angles, Dr. Morello, from slowing down the blood, in stressful situations, shunting that blood into the extremities instead of in the gut, keeping it there for proper absorption. That's an issue. External stressors and oxidants, pro-oxidants like smoking or excess alcohol. All this contributes to slowing down of the mitochondrial function and leads to potential chronic diseases. Like you mentioned, you've dealt with fibromyalgia cases and multiple sclerosis. All these different chronic neurodegenerative diseases can be linked to mitochondrial health. So you and I can keep going for another four-part series here on mitochondria. It's an extremely important topic, and we will have you on again, Dr. Morello. But what's a good take home here in about a minute or less that someone should have on their radar? And then we'll get to how people can learn more, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so the takeaway is the importance of mitochondria. Number one, it's not something that we've really looked at.
Right.
I mean, you remember in high school with the two little mitochondria,
Oh, I remember.
oh yeah, the powerhouses, but
Uh-huh.
has done anything with them or about them, and now they're becoming like the thing. Everybody's talking about mitochondria for dementia, for this, for that, for cancer. So we want to, get an understanding of what they are, how they work, and what we can do to support them. So you have a lot of information already. Now you may know why diet is so important in anything that we do. Like that's a big, big player. So now you have a better understanding because these compounds, these chemicals in the foods we consume are interfering with the functioning of this energy production cycle. And if the energy isn't there, the cell can't function. You can't produce the hormones you need. You can't produce the neurotransmitters you need. You can't produce the chemicals that your body needs to function optimally. So, number one. Number two, there are things that you can take that can help improve the function of the mitochondria. How
Right.
it works. Very simple things that we've discussed in this Zoom call today.
Yeah.
And so those are things that you can do right now. And the bottom line is that life revolves around the mitochondria and the microbiome, which is kind of fascinating, real fascinating. And now and be grateful to your mothers because they gave you the
Yeah.
mitochondria
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
the microbiome, which is kind of interesting in itself.
Dr. Morello, thank you for coming on for episode 198. We always appreciate you. We've gotten great feedback from your past episode, and you bring just 33 years here of just speaking from experience here, dealing with all kinds of different cases. Where can people stay in the loop with more? Do you have a website or
Yeah,
natural?
we shut it down because it was just too overcrowded, but
Uh-huh.
we're rebuilding it again, and it's going to have all my videos, these kinds of videos, and I don't sell anything on the website, just information.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, I'm an information kind of person. So,
Yep.
and accurate information because there's so much stuff out there. Oh my goodness.
Right.
It drives me crazy. So want to simplify things so people can go do things and get outcomes. So that's a key. So
Yeah,
yes.
keep us updated on that. We'll share that resource in the future when it's ready. And in the meantime, naturalfactors.com, folks, naturalfactors.com. And I highly suggest you watch this episode a couple times here. Take some notes because this is an important one. So thank you,
All right.
Dr. Morello.
Okay, thank you. Okay, take care, Dave. Bye-bye.